Hello, everyone, and welcome to Solutions. My name is Loila, and I'll be sharing practical parenting tips for raising a godly soul. Because we are living souls having a human experience, as parents, we do well to help our kids develop the inner world of their soul life. Today, we're talking about the soul trait of humility. We'll explore practical ways to help your child take ownership of their inner development. Let's start by defining humility. Humility is defined as taking an accurate recognition of self-importance, neither too high or too low, focusing neither on our own virtues or the faults of others. So let me ask you, have you ever walked into a room to find your kids fighting, right? And you weren't there, you don't know who was responsible for starting, who did the wrong thing, who instigated. And so you just hear the two of them, or three or four, pointing the finger at each other. And you're left to act as the detective trying to figure out how to make sense out of all of this. You might resort to walking away because, hey, stop fighting. I don't want to have to come in and deal with this, right? Or you might have an idea as you hear their stories as to who is the guilty one, right? Who is the one who actually did something that they shouldn't have done? Now, when you single out that child, they may feel picked on, um, unloved, that it's unfair. They may feel that they're focused on the other child who got away with something that they shouldn't have. At the end of the day, there's a bit of confusion and resentment. Can you relate? This is a very common dynamic that happens in the parent-child relationship and the child-to-child relationship. But imagine if you knew exactly what to say and do to help your child take ownership of their own faults and shortcomings. What would that be like for you? If you have a story that keeps repeating, a dynamic that keeps repeating in your child's life, share it with us. We'll see if we can crack the code on how to help your child take ownership of their own development of humility. A while back, a mom came to me and she said, Loila, I feel guilty that I don't know how to handle this sort of situation. This mom would either punish both of her children when they had a squabble and she walked in on it, or she would just sort of like walk away or single out one child. And she felt guilty because she could see that one of her kids started to feel like they were unloved, that they were being picked on, that the whole situation was unfair. And this child was refusing to take ownership of their part of the conflict because of this whole dynamic where they felt picked on. So how can you parent in such a way that you help your child develop the soul trait of humility, the ability to think of others before themselves, to consider their own wrongdoing instead of defending themselves or throwing somebody else under the bus? I love visuals. I think visuals are a great way to remember principles and parenting concepts. So the visual I want to give you is self-awareness, right? How do we help our children develop self-awareness, that ability to put aside ego and pride and look at themselves to improve, right? So the principle we're going to explore today, the parenting strategy, is all about problem solving. Because the thing is, children can't really wrap their brain around this invisible concept of humility. Many adults can't wrap their brain around the idea of humility. So how do you teach it to a child in a way that they can really grab hold of? We're going to explore problem solving as a way to help children develop their humility. So I create lots of little videos to help prime the pump of an idea through workshops in various ways. I'm going to share with you a little intro video to help introduce this idea of problem solving through what I call the three-question timeout. So with that said, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, hopefully you can all see my screen. And here we go. Okay. So there we have this uh, cute little way of remembering. Let me just clear my screen. Okay, so let me unpack that for you. So if you're dealing with a preschool child, they don't understand, they don't have the cognitive development yet to problem solve, to understand this idea of humility. So sometimes, especially nowadays, timeout gets a little bit of a bad rap, unfortunately, because it's done wrong so often. Timeout is not a punishment. It's not even a negative consequence at all, especially for a young child. It is a time to develop, to get an early feel for a principle we're going to unpack in a moment. But if you have a preschooler and you want them to start to get a feel for the three-question timeout, you simply start by just having a child take a break. You're there with them, or they're alone, depending on the personality of the child. Little ones love visuals, so maybe a timer is a great way to help a child just stop and breathe, or count, or cry, or just release those emotions so that they can kind of reset to come back into a restorative environment, back to the scene of the crime where you can teach. So that's all I'm going to say for now about the preschooler who needs just a moment to reset before they can come back. A something that measures time, right? A little timer is a great visual to help kids know that they're going to move on visually. They can see that. Okay, so let's now talk about the older child, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. The three-question timeout is a beautiful opportunity, strategy, parenting tool to help a child realize that there is a practical way to develop their humility. So there are three questions to ask during a timeout. So let me just take a moment if you are wondering, how do you do a timeout in a way that's not a punishment, not a negative consequence? And what are the strategies to actually make it end where you want it to end, which is restoration, right? And growth and maturity. So when a child takes a few minutes for timeout, they should be going somewhere away from the scene of the crime. A child who has an audience, because of ego and pride and all of that, they really do focus on their audience. So we want to remove them from an audience, but we don't want them to go somewhere where we can't see them, because sometimes children have a way of distracting themselves. getting preoccupied with something else and never really staying focused on what happened that needs correction. So maybe we want them to sit in a chair nearby or on the stairs, anywhere where they don't have an audience and you can keep an eye on them. And this is the thing about the 3-question timeout. There's no particular time limit to how long a child should kind of take this little break. It's up to them when they can answer 3 questions, which are, what did you do? Why was it wrong? And what could you have done differently? Let's talk for a minute about why these questions are so strategic. Sometimes a child legitimately doesn't know what they did wrong. This is an opportunity for you to find out, do they even know? And for a child to confess. Confession is a major part of humility. Being able to say, I was wrong, is very humbling. You have to put aside pride and ego to do that, even for an adult, right? So this is really a life lesson. And this is priming the pump of a life lesson. Second question, why was it wrong? Sometimes children don't really realize that what was the principle, the value, the life principle underneath the behavior, right? We don't want to just look for external obedience, cooperation. We want to know that what we're asking for at the surface is based on deeper values and that our children are picking up on those values, that they understand why is it wrong to hit? Why is it wrong to say mean names? Why is it wrong to take something from someone? Right? So that question enables us to discover whether they understand the life principle below the surface. And then finally, what could you have done differently? This is a beautiful opportunity for a child to problem solve, right? We were talking earlier about using problem solving skills to help a child develop their humility. The purpose of this prime problem solving exercise, what could you have done differently, is it gives a child to go back in their mind, kind of reframe the situation, self discover self-awareness. What could I have done differently? Not what could somebody else have done differently. A child's tendency is to blame shift, right? Well, he did this to me, she did that to me, right? So easily for all of us, we find we so easily see the fault of another, but it takes a lot of humility, self-reflection to admit, what did I do? Even if the other child, right, in this scenario, we're talking about 2 children who are bickering over something, and you walk in to see, okay, what happened here? They're both blaming each other. The tendency, due to pride and ego, is to recognize the offense done to us. But we can always have done something, handled the situation better. So what could you have done differently? Primes the pump of children reflecting on self, on improvement, on problem solving, on restoration. So these are the 3 questions. And when a child is asked to sit quietly, answer these 3 questions, at the point that they can answer those questions, they're to come back to you. That could take 2 minutes, that could take 10 minutes, that could take all day for a child who's really resistant, whose pride and ego are really just front and center. And of course, it takes time to develop the humility to actually consider these questions, answer them honestly. But when a child can come back to you and answer those questions satisfactorily, then they can go back to the scene of the crime and implement the solution that they created. These are the benefits. There's no time limit. The 3-question timeout means there's no time limit. To the point that a child can think about these questions and answer them, come to you, share their answers, they can go right back to what they were doing. Scene of the crime, but now implementing their solution. That's restoration. It's self-monitoring. A child is going to think of the solution and implement. That's empowering. That creates confidence. And of course, you're praising them along the way. The focus is on restoration. The whole goal of taking a minute to sit aside and answer these questions is really focused on restoration, because as soon as a child can answer these questions, they get to go back, implement, and see something better happen at the end. And isn't that the goal of all correction? To see restoration, confidence, problem-solving skills, communication. This is good on so many levels. And of course, personal responsibility. This is about being able to admit what I did wrong, right? As the child, as an adult. These exercises practiced as a child set this human up, this soul up for success in future relationships, right? And so multiple benefits of the 3-question timeout that very practical, but help a child at the same time work on developing the soul trait of humility. And of course, there's always going to be the resistant child who wants to give a quick off the cuff answer to the 3 questions, maybe just so that they can get back to what they were doing. Maybe they have revenge still on their hearts. Pride and ego are very challenging to get over, and it takes time to exercise these principles, these practices. So maybe you're asking about the resistant child. What do I do if my child comes to me and gives answers that are really not reflective of humility? Well, if you know the game Monopoly, when you get that card that says, do not pass go, do not collect $200, go back. That's exactly what you're going to do in that situation. You see, oftentimes a parent finds themselves trying to justify their desires, their requests, until the child accepts, says, okay, but that's flipped. You do not owe your child an explanation, a justification for wanting something. It's the other way around, right? So you have the right to say to the resistant child, that solution, that response, your tone of voice, your attitude, your body language is not acceptable. Please go back and continue to think about answers, solutions that are peaceful. Peaceful. That is a key word, because even the most resistant child knows, even if they won't admit it while they're consumed by ego, consumed by pride, they know when something is peaceful or not peaceful. And sometimes, I mean, I've seen it with clients where it may take all day. It may take, a child has to reach the point where playing this game isn't fun anymore, isn't paying off for them. And so ultimately you have to win that game of somebody's going to give up first. Somebody's going to get tired first. Somebody's going to decide this isn't worth it first. It has to be your child, right? So I'm sure you don't have that resistant child, but I want to put this tool in your toolbox so that on that day, when you randomly, it's just a bad day and you're dealing with the situation and you don't know how to deal with it, this tool is in your back pocket for the really bad day. Okay, so let's talk about some games to help anytime we're teaching life principles. anytime we're working, helping our children develop their soul characters, traits, it should be done in a fun way. It can be done in a fun way, right? We want our children to associate learning and growing and maturity in a positive way. So really all games teach so much, and we'll probably talk about this class after class after class, but any problem solving game such as Clue, the escape room. The escape room is a really popular activity, outdoor activity, right? But you can do it at home too, where you have to really use your problem solving skills to figure things out in a fun way. There is also a game, now I don't personally know this game, but it's called Cat Crimes Brain Game. And it's got great reviews on Amazon. And I actually want to give you the link so that you can check out for yourself. Give me one moment here. I'm going to copy and paste it into chat. Here we go. Okay, I'm going to put it right here. That is the link for the cat game. What is it called again? The Cat Crimes Brain Game. Especially if your kids love cats, they're going to really like this game. And do it as a family, right? We want to create bonds along the way. So I'm just looking here to see if there's any quick questions. Nope, I don't see any. So for younger children, puzzles, memory games, really everything that gets them thinking is going to help them prime the pump of problem solving. So here is I'm going to say it is a study that was done that shows that children who have had practice during preschool with early problem solving games, being strategic and intentional about that, will have a lot more capability when facing challenges later on in life. During the early formative years, 0 through 7, when the brain is neurologically developing and creating mental connections, neural connections, right? The way that they view the entire world, all their interactions, is based on the first 7 years of their life. So everything you do during that time strategically, by offering that young children, preschool children, problem solving games, is going to have years and years of benefits. You'll leverage all your other efforts with your child. Okay, so in summary, kids will finger point. They will deny personal responsibility. It's the ego, it's pride, but it's very natural and very normal. Don't let that upset you or frustrate you, right? Where we talk about mindset, expectation. It all comes down to expectation. You can expect that children will deny, children will finger point, children will genuinely believe that somebody else did them wrong. And maybe they're absolutely right. But we all have personal responsibility, something we can do differently, some way we could have reacted or acted in a better way. You can teach humility by teaching kids to self-assess, problem solve, and restore. You can prime the pump of humility using the 3-question timeout. What did you do? Why was it wrong? And what could you have done differently? So humility. Okay. Someone is asking about the definition of humility. Humility is defined as an accurate recognition of self-importance, neither too high or too low. Sometimes we think humility is thinking of yourself as nothing, as being a doormat. That's not humility. It's the ability to have an accurate understanding of yourself. You're not more important than somebody else. You're not less important than somebody else. But there's personal responsibility. We're focusing neither on our own virtues or the other person's fault. We're looking for restoration. We're looking to take the leadership role, the first step in how do we fix this? This is a beautiful, beautiful trait for every soul of every age. And the earlier we can teach someone, teach ourselves, practice these exercises ourselves, the easier it will be to operate in the soul trait of humility, the quicker we will be to move into humility, and the quicker we will see peace, calm, and restoration. I'm going to answer one more question and then we'll move to Q&A. One of the things she will ask him, was that a good choice or a bad choice? I like that. I like that. Was that a good choice or a bad choice? When there is a conflict and we have to interact with our children to help them develop their humility, it's important to use words that resonate with a child. Not every child will accept the wording the same way. We all perceive things differently. One event, one activity can happen, and everybody around can experience that event in a different way, receive it in a different way, based on the maturity level, based on prior experiences, based on their own temperament. So it's really important that we find the words, we find the way of communicating in such a way with each child that they can receive, right? We're looking at the end goal. If the end goal is that a child is able to put down their pride, put down their ego, become self-aware, and problem solve, that's the end goal, then the way we help that child, we guide that child to that destination, is going to look slightly different and have different words. So, was that a good choice or a bad choice? If you're getting the response that you're looking for and it seems genuine, not just let me say whatever I have to say so I can get out of the situation, then yes, those are the best words to use. But if a child is not receiving that language, then use different words. My overarching principle and philosophy is use simple words. The simpler, the better, and the shorter, less words, right? Children tune out quickly. Less words, simple words, and visuals. People love visuals. We're problem solving, right? What does that look like? And we are looking for self-awareness. Okay, short and simple. Yeah. And so we've talked about the two children. Oh, there's one last thing I want to say on this topic of walking into a room, finding children in conflict, and where do you go from there to help children develop humility? We talked about the 3-question timeout. The question might arise, how do I know which child to move into the 3-question timeout? The answer, surprisingly, is it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter at all, because in any conflict, there's always 2 people, and they both can do something differently or could have done something differently to reduce the tension, the friction, the bickering, the finger pointing, right? So maybe you just pull aside child number 1, right? This time, and they're saying, no, 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 it's the other child. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So you can take one child one time, and then the next conflict, you take the other child. Now, typically one child is an instigator and one child is more passive. Very rare to get 2 children who by temperament are both aggressive. So maybe you do believe you know who was the more aggressive one, but this is key. This is so important, and I want to share this with you before we end. Is that the aggressive child needs to work on a more calm, gentle problem-solving strategies, right? But the mild-mannered, gentle, passive child needs to work on self-advocating more, on having boundaries in place, and knowing how to feel empowered when they are being taken advantage of. So both children, no matter what kind of temperament they have, that three question timeout is valuable for both of them. The things they need to work on, their weaknesses, their imbalance of humility, thinking too little of themselves or thinking too high of themselves, both need work. And so the way you guide your child is going to be different based on the temperament, but the three questions are still valuable either way. So with that said, I want to invite you to join us next time as we explore practical ways to develop the soul trait of honor. So join us for that next time. Thank you.